Hello and welcome to another TLDR video. With the summer holiday season on the horizon and many of us hoping to jet away, countries have begun to loosen their lockdown measures and allow foreign visitors. But countries haven't opened up their borders completely. Many have implemented so-called travel corridors or air bridges, as well as some countries even implementing a traffic light system for quarantine. But one story that's really captured a lot of people's attention is Europe's outright banning of US travellers. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what's happened and why Europe's chosen to do this. If you didn't know already, this is TLDR News EU, where we discuss all kinds of news topics related to Europe. And you should definitely subscribe if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in. Also, and importantly, considering that this video relates to the EU and US, we also have the TLDR US channel, which covers, well, you can probably guess. There's a link in the description to TLDR US, so subscribe to that one too if you're interested. So, what's happened, and why is the EU banning US travellers? Well, let's start by looking back to the 17th of March, when EU member states agreed to coordinated action at the EU's external borders, the borders that Europe has with third countries. At first, the restriction was a temporary one, lasting just 30 days, barring all non-essential travel with third countries to the EU plus area. That is to say, all EU member states, plus the 4 Schengen-associated states of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland, minus Ireland. This month-long plan was first prolonged until the 15th of May, then the 15th of June, and finally the 30th of June. The thought being that travel restrictions should be lifted on the 1st of July throughout the entirety of the EU plus area, rather than a disjointed piecemeal selection of national exclusions. So it seemed like the entire EU plus zone was ready to reopen, meaning that from July 1st, travel to these countries would be possible again. However, as is so often the case with COVID, it turned out not to be quite that simple. As reported by the New York Times on Thursday, the EU is ready to continue to bar most travellers from the United States, Russia, and dozens of other countries considered too risky because they have not controlled the coronavirus outbreak. For context, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control has placed Brazil, Peru, Chile, Panama, and Saudi Arabia as countries with the highest case notification rate, with the US and Russia's notification rate lower, but still substantially higher than that of Europe. And that comparatively high case rate is really important when the European Commission's advisory checklist makes it clear that a country should be in a comparable or better epidemiological situation as the average in the EU area. With regard to the number of new infections, trends in new cases, the response to COVID-19 taking into account available information and aspects such as testing, surveillance, contact tracing, containment, treatment, and reporting. The US, along with other countries, have failed to pass the conditions that the EU has put in place, the things it expects countries to be doing, as well as the rate of infection that it finds acceptable. As such, it appears that Americans won't get the access to the EU that many other countries will be granted. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, during a virtual conference with the German Marshall Fund, said that he hoped that a travel ban wouldn't come to fruition. We'll work closely with our European friends broadly because I know there's different views. We've heard from a dozen or more countries that have very different views about their willingness to open up their borders to anyone, not only folks from the United States of America. Pompeo is right that it's a hard decision to make. Some EU countries, particularly those in the south, Greece, Portugal and Spain, depend substantially on tourism. According to US government data, some 7 million Americans visited Europe in the months of June, July and August last year alone. So there'll invariably be some political pressure to reopen Europe's external borders and do so to America rapidly. The question being whether political pressure trumps the science. An EU diplomat talking to CNN insisted that there was no political aspect to the criteria that's being discussed by the EU. It's only ever been about health. For sure, you can see not being on the list as something political when one country is allowed in and another is not. But this is a misinterpretation of what we're doing. We're looking to open our borders. This is a positive step. There are 27 countries sitting around the table who are having a lot of different opinions. They're focused on an objective criteria, as the criteria need to apply uniformly. If you take the US, as I know there's been a lot of interest already since the New York Times article, but if you look exactly at the criteria since the 11th of June, then we cannot open our borders to the US, but we cannot open our borders to other countries also. So what do you think? Is the EU right to be banning US travellers in order to protect citizens and prevent future spread of the virus? Or is this simply a case of virtue signalling? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, you can also get involved in the conversation over on Discord. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more updates on this and other European topics. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible.